Some people will never notice your boundaries until you enforce them. Others will only notice once you're gone. Either way, what you tolerate teaches them how to treat you. This isn't about control. It's about clarity. It's about remembering what you've been handing away in silence and choosing not to do that anymore. Welcome to Stoic Spider. Some people won't notice your boundaries until you enforce them. Others won't notice until you leave. Either way, what you tolerate teaches them how to treat you. Welcome to Stoic Spider. This isn't about rules. It's about remembering who you are when no one else does. Chapter 1. You weren't hurt because they crossed a line. You were hurt because you stayed. They entered casually, smiled, nodded. Took a little of your energy, a bit of your time, a few chances. Then stepped deeper. A comment too far. A gesture out of line. Once, then again. And you stayed silent. Not because you didn't see it, but because you hoped they'd understand on their own. You didn't want to make it a big deal. You didn't want to seem difficult. You wanted to keep the peace, but in return, you lost yourself. What they touched wasn't just a boundary, it was your self-respect, left undefended. Stoicism doesn't begin with controlling others. It begins with a harsh truth. You can't control who respects you, but you can control how long you stay after they don't. Epictetus didn't say, "Make them understand." He said, "Stick to your principles, and let those out of sync fall away." These days we talk about setting boundaries, being clear, being assertive. But Stoics do something quieter, something stronger. They don't warn, they withdraw. Not to punish, but to preserve. They stand still, without needing to explain, without needing to prove. Not everyone needs correcting. Not everyone deserves an explanation. Someone who crosses your line 3 times doesn't need a 4th reminder. They need distance. Psychology calls this conscious disengagement. It's not avoidance, it's clarity. You can care about someone, you can even understand them, and still choose to walk away. Not out of hate, but because you finally respect yourself enough to go. The Stoic doesn't leave to teach a lesson. They leave because staying would mean abandoning themselves. You weren't hurt because someone crossed a line. You were hurt because you stayed after they did. You compromised, then felt bitter. You silenced yourself to keep the connection alive. And that broke trust. Not with them, but with you. Sometimes it's this simple. You sell something. They bargain you down to the edge. You say yes, reluctantly, afraid to lose the deal. Then they return. Ask for more. No filter, no respect. The mistake wasn't theirs. It was yours. For not protecting your value the first time. You didn't say no. You didn't leave. You thought you were keeping a customer. But really you were losing your self-worth. The Stoic moves differently. They understand. Every yes that should have been a no cost you more than peace. It cost you trust in yourself. And when that loss becomes a pattern, You won't need anyone else to hurt you. You'll already be doing it. But today, you get to choose differently. Not by raising your voice, not by blaming, but by remembering. Self-respect isn't declared. It's lived. You weren't hurt because they disrespected you. You were hurt because you didn't defend yourself. And Stoicism? It teaches you how to return to yourself, from within. Final reflection. When was the last time you said yes, while everything in you screamed no? And what made you stay? Chapter 2. Silence isn't weakness. It's clarity. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to explain your rules to people who already broke them. You don't need to beg anyone to understand your limits, because if they cared, they would have noticed before you had to speak. That's the Stoic path. Not the loud one. The clear one. Clarity doesn't always look like strength. Sometimes it looks like walking away without a fight. Sometimes it looks like not replying. Sometimes it looks like saying no and never looking back. And yes, the world might call that cold. But it's not cold. It's clean. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. When someone disrespects your boundary, the urge is to respond, to justify, to correct, to make a point. But that's the trap. That's what keeps you entangled. The Stoic sees it, steps out of it, redirects energy inward, because the more you engage, the more you leak. Not power, but peace, and your peace is not free." Modern psychology has a name for this: cognitive fatigue. It's what happens when your brain gets tired of defending who you are. You think you're fighting for your worth, but really you're giving it away. One explanation at a time. That's why the Stoic chooses silence. Not to suppress, but to preserve. You don't need to win the argument. You need to win back your direction. You don't owe energy to people who feed on confusion. You don't owe clarity to those who benefit from your chaos. You don't owe explanation to someone who's already shown you what they think you're worth. Silence only works if it comes from alignment, not from fear. Not from resentment, not as punishment, just quiet. Because you already know. You don't need to prove you deserve peace. You simply refuse to give it away. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. Not because you're afraid, but because the conversation isn't worth your center. This is not weakness. It's choosing where your strength belongs. This is not giving up. It's opting out because you're done negotiating with noise. Final reflection. Where are you still trying to prove that your boundary matters to someone who already showed you it doesn't? Chapter 3. When you don't speak up, your body keeps the score. You felt it. That tightness in your chest. That knot in your stomach when they pushed just a little too far. And still, you smiled. You laughed it off. You let it slide. You told yourself. It's not a big deal. But your body disagreed. That's the thing about unspoken boundaries. You can hide them with words. But your body tells the truth. Your shoulders tighten. Your sleep breaks. Your mood shifts. Because something Sacred was crossed, and you didn't protect it. Stoicism doesn't blame you for being afraid. It just doesn't let you stay afraid. It teaches you this. Every time you stay silent when you should have spoken, you don't just lose that moment. You lose trust in yourself. That loss cuts deeper than the conflict you were avoiding. Psychologists call it self-abandonment. It's what happens when you choose comfort over truth, approval over reality, being liked over being honest. It feels safe at first, but deep down, your nervous system starts to believe, I can't count on myself. You lose your own protection. You doubt your own voice, not because others crossed the line, but because you didn't draw it. And that doubt? It lives in your spine, in your habits, in the way you flinch at your own needs. A Stoic learns to do the harder thing, to sit with the discomfort, to listen to it, to act from it. Not out of anger, but out of alignment. You say, this matters. You say, no, thank you. You say, this is not for me. Even when it shakes your voice. Even when you feel alone. Even when they call you difficult. Because every time you honor yourself, you rebuild trust with the one person who can't afford to lose it again. You. And no, it won't feel good right away. Speaking up will feel selfish. Walking away will feel dramatic. Saying no will feel like failure. But it's not failure. It's freedom. The quiet kind. The Stoic doesn't perform peace. They build it, from integrity. They don't beg to be understood. They practice being consistent. They don't chase connection at the cost of clarity. They learn to sit with themselves without shame. And in that space, they return. Final reflection. What part of you have you abandoned just to keep someone else comfortable? And how long do you plan to stay gone? Chapter 4. Stoics don't react. They redirect. Someone crosses the line. They insult you. Disregard your needs. Push past your no. And you feel it. That surge. That heat rising. That need to fire back. To explain. To make them feel what they made you feel. But the Stoic doesn't take the bait. They don't react. They redirect. Not away from the situation, but back toward themselves. Because the insult isn't the real danger. The danger is losing yourself while trying to be heard by someone who was never listening. If you explode, you hand them control. If you stay silent with resentment, you hand them your peace. But if you pause, breathe, and choose, you take it back. That's the Stoic move. You don't fight to be right. You return to what matters. You don't trade your center for a moment of noise. You step out of the loop. You walk in another direction. Modern psychology calls it response inhibition. The ability to hold space between stimulus and response. It's the gap where your power lives. And the bigger that gap, the clearer your life becomes. You don't owe your reaction to someone who thrives on pulling it out of you. You don't owe your fire to people who only want to feel powerful by setting others off. So what do you owe? You owe yourself stillness. restraint, and the strength to say, I don't go there anymore. This doesn't mean you're passive. It means you've evolved past the need to win moments that cost you too much. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is leave the room. Close the tab. End the conversation. Walk away, without the speech, without the exit line, without the last word. Just peace, because not everyone deserves access to your inner fire. Final reflection. Where are you? Still spending energy trying to set someone straight? When the truth is, you've known for a while you should have walked. Chapter 5. A Stoic sets boundaries to protect themselves, not to control others. Most people think boundaries are instructions. Don't talk to me that way. Don't call me at this hour. Don't cross this line. As if rules, once spoken, will be respected. But the Stoic knows better. A boundary isn't something you tell someone else to follow. It's something you choose to enforce through action. Not to control them, but to protect yourself. You don't say, don't disrespect me, and then stay when they do. You walk, you reduce access, you go quiet, you exit, not out of drama, out of design. Because if there's no consequence, there was no boundary, just a suggestion. And suggestions don't protect you. Modern therapy backs this up. Behavioral boundaries aren't about words. They're about what you do after the line is crossed. People learn who you are by watching what you tolerate. Not by what you say, but by what you stay for. The Stoic doesn't announce standards. They live them. No ultimatums. No repeated warnings. Just presence. Rooted in principle. You don't chase respect. You walk in it. And those who can't match that energy, they fall away, naturally. No conflict needed. You don't need to be understood to be steady. You don't need agreement to walk away. You don't need to make someone see why it matters to you. You only need to live in a way that shows it does. Let your boundaries be quiet. Let them be felt. Let them show up in how you spend your time, in what you no longer explain, in who no longer gets access to the softest parts of you. That's not cruelty. It's clarity. Final reflection. What have you been calling a boundary, but treating like a wish? And what would change if you stopped hoping they'll get it, and simply started living like you already have? Chapter 6. The Stoic No. Firm, quiet, and without guilt. You finally say it. No. No performance. No long excuse. Just a simple line. And immediately, you feel it. That pressure. That old guilt rising. Did I hurt their feelings? Was that too harsh? Am I being selfish? That guilt is not wisdom. It's conditioning. You were trained to believe that being agreeable is the same as being kind. But the Stoic knows. A dishonest yes is more harmful than a clean, quiet no. You don't owe anyone a version of you that's always available, always accommodating, always agreeable. That version of you was never peace. It was performance. Modern psychology agrees. People-pleasing isn't empathy. It's self-betrayal dressed up as politeness. And the longer you wear it, the heavier it gets. The Stoic doesn't say no to punish. They say no because something matters more. Peace, clarity, alignment. They don't wrap it in guilt. They don't soften it so it's easier to swallow. They don't over-explain, because a boundary shouldn't need a backstory. They understand. Guilt is what you feel when you do what's right. For yourself, after years of doing what made others comfortable. Let it come. Let it pass. Don't treat guilt as a signal to go back. Treat it as proof you're finally leaving the old pattern. You don't have to say yes just to make the room warmer. You don't have to stay just to avoid being misunderstood. You're allowed to disappoint others and still respect yourself. The Stoic no doesn't slam the door. It doesn't explain itself. It simply closes what no longer fits. Final reflection. Where have you been padding your no with guilt, just to avoid the silence that would come if you stood your ground? Chapter 7. When they call you selfish for choosing yourself, you finally draw the line. You say no. You take your space. And suddenly, you're the problem. You've changed. You're cold now. You only think about yourself. But the Stoic doesn't react. They expect this, because when you stop abandoning yourself, the people who benefited from that will call it selfishness. It's not personal. It's predictable. You disrupted the pattern, and they lost control. Modern psychology calls this boundary backlash. When people guilt-trip you for no longer being easy to manipulate, they don't miss you. They miss access. The Stoic doesn't argue, doesn't defend, doesn't try to explain. They're healing to people who only love the broken version. You're not selfish. You're sovereign. And that shift, they might never understand. But you will feel it in your bones. Let them call it what they want. Let them miss who you were when you didn't know better. That person is gone. Not in bitterness, but in evolution. You don't owe softness to those who only showed up for your silence. You don't owe comfort to those who never made space for your truth. Selfishness is taking more than you need. Clarity is refusing to give what you no longer owe. They'll say you're difficult now. Unreasonable. Guarded. But deep down, what they really mean is, I can't control you anymore. And that is not your problem. That is your freedom. Final reflection. Who's been calling you selfish, when all you've done is finally stop handing over your peace to people who never earned it? Chapter 8. When boundaries become who you are. At first, boundaries feel like effort. You write them out. Say them out loud. Repeat them. Enforce them. You feel tense, guilty, awkward. You second-guess yourself every time. But then something shifts. You stop announcing them. You stop negotiating. You stop managing people's reactions. Because now, you've become the boundary. A Stoic doesn't walk into the room and tell people how to treat them. They simply exist in a way that makes it obvious. It's not arrogance. It's alignment. It's in your posture, your pacing, your eyes, your calm refusal to chase what's misaligned. Modern psychology calls this nonverbal boundary signaling. Your nervous system broadcasts your truth before you speak. People feel it. They adjust, or they exit. No drama, no debate, just energetic clarity. You don't have to raise your voice when your presence already sets the tone. You don't need to over-explain when your patterns are already clean. This is the shift. Boundaries stop being something you say. They become something you are. How you walk. What you don't respond to. Where you no longer place your time. What you never beg for again. And in that clarity, the wrong people quietly remove themselves. Not because you pushed, but because they no longer recognize who you've become. A Stoic doesn't gatekeep peace. They embody it. And that embodiment does the filtering for them. Final reflection. What would your life feel like if you never had to explain your limits again? Because your energy already made them clear. Chapter 9. Your boundaries create space for what's real. Most people set boundaries to protect themselves, and that's a good place to start. But the Stoic knows. That's not where it ends. Because when you stop leaking energy, when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop making room for what doesn't respect you, you begin to notice. What's been waiting to come in? Clarity, stillness, realness. The kind of connection that doesn't need managing. The kind of peace that doesn't depend on approval. You start to see who stays when you stop performing, who listens when you stop pleasing, who slows down when you stop rushing. Most people think boundaries are about pushing people out, but a Stoic knows. They're about filtering. Not building walls, building standards. Modern psychology calls it relational alignment. It means choosing people, places, and patterns that honor your pace, not your performance. You stop saying yes because it looks good. You start saying yes because it feels true. You stop shrinking to keep the peace. You start expanding to make room for truth. The ones who can't handle it fall away. And that's not rejection. That's refinement. A Stoic doesn't just protect their energy. They protect the conditions that allow truth to grow. And that kind of space, rare, uncrowded, undeniably real. Final reflection. What could finally find you if you cleared out everything that only stayed because you were afraid to say no? Chapter 10. You no longer set boundaries. You are one. There comes a point in the Stoic journey where you stop correcting people. You stop over-explaining. You stop teaching others how to treat you. You stop defending your peace. Not because you gave up, but because you woke up. You said the hard no. You walked away. You sat with the guilt. You survived the silence. You rebuilt. And now, you've changed. You no longer announce your limits. You simply live them. You no longer chase alignment. You become it. People feel it. They sense your center. They adjust, or they leave. You don't chase. You don't flinch. You don't lower your volume just to keep someone close. You remain. Modern, Psychology calls this embodied self-respect. It's not a mindset. It's a presence. It's how you breathe, how you walk into a room, how you say nothing, and still say everything. You don't need applause to feel real. You don't need understanding to feel valid. You don't need permission to feel whole. You've stopped asking people to get it. You've stopped hoping they'll come around. You've stopped explaining your clarity to those who only valued your confusion. Now, you live it. Quietly, deliberately, without performance. And those who belong, they'll feel safe in your presence, because you've become what they're still searching for. A human who knows their worth, and needs nothing from anyone to prove it. A Stoic doesn't gatekeep strength. They embody it. And that embodiment makes boundaries unnecessary. Not because people stop testing them, but because you've stopped negotiating with what drains you. You don't hold the line. You are the line. Final reflection. What changes in your life when you stop trying to enforce respect and simply become someone who never has to ask for it? If this spoke to something in you, don't rush to share it. Sit with it. Let it shift something deeper than just your thoughts. But if you want to keep walking this path, with calm, with clarity, with truth that doesn't beg for applause, you know what to do. Subscribe. Quietly, deliberately, like a Stoic would. Because once you stop apologizing for your limits, the next lesson is even harder. How to stop giving your energy to people who only show up when they need something. That's what we'll face in the next video.